One of the biggest depth chart surprises at camp is that Jeff Okudah has a starting job and might not even be competing for it. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate my hashtag everydayers so very much. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Today on the show, we got a lot of updating to do. Josh Matelis signed a big contract. Justin Jefferson is out for, I'll say it in the scariest way possible, an indefinite amount of time with a hamstring strain. And J.J. McCarthy had a fantastic day in front of fans. The first day that fans could come out to practice, which was Saturday. So a lot to go over. But one of the things that really sort of clicked in my brain was Jeff Okudah is getting first team reps as the third cornerback. So anytime they're in nickel, it's Okudah, and Byron Murphy slides to the inside. They're not rotating anybody else in. Mekhi Blackmon isn't like trading snaps with him there, at least as of this moment. That is where they're starting things, which was a bit of a surprise to me. Everybody, like if you look at the articles when Okudah was signed, everybody pretty much regards it as a depth move. Oh, here's a guy, he'll bolster the room. He maybe won't be, a starter, but he'll be probably part of it and he'll help him have some depth. But no, this ain't depth. Y'all, this is a dude that is playing. He will be a playing player for the Vikings. That immediately filled me with dread and concern. Because Okudah does not have the best reputation after flaming out in Detroit and then going through Atlanta and then Houston, getting hurt. So I figured, okay, well, let's not go off of just like narratives and vibes. Let's actually like watch the guy. So I did just that. I took the two games that he played the most in, which were Baltimore and Kansas City. I also chose those two because they're good offenses. And tried to get a sense for his game, and I recorded the entire process and put it up on my Patreon page, patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL. So if you want to just see me work through it in real time, it took me about an hour, and you can watch that entire hour. But after that, you see, like once you've watched a couple and you watch every play for, once you watch like 100 snaps or so, you start to see the patterns that come out every single time. And you can start to see the kind of corner that we are dealing with. And like a really clear picture begins to emerge from the things that stick around. So I'm going to go into a lot of the nitty gritty detail about Okudah. We'll talk about all the contract stuff, J.J. McCarthy, Justin Jefferson, all of that later in the show. But the main point that I am going to make is Jeff Okudah plays cocky cornerback. And I'm not going to verify this, so if I'm super wrong about why he flamed out, I know injuries had a ton to do with it, but I think like other players have been injured and then like not flamed out with their teams, right? The reason that Okudah flamed out in his other destinations is that he did not play well enough for those teams to commit to him long term, right? Whether you're injured or not, the moments where you were not injured, you either showed something or you didn't, right? And so I went in asking the question, why? What could have happened here? So here's a theory, okay? I'm not going to watch like 2022 Lions to verify it, but here's a theory. Okudah was the golden boy of golden boys at Ohio State. He was like the dog of dogs, right? And he was a fantastic corner there at Ohio State. So he goes third overall in the draft, right? He was that highly regarded as a player. So as a high school stud and a college stud, you get to play with a certain amount of confidence when you're just that much better than the guy across from you. Confidence is everything at cornerback. So when I say a cocky brand of football, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Harrison Smith also plays a cocky brand of football for safety. The way he aligns himself, how long he waits before he moves, it's very confident. It's very, reliant on the stuff that your film study and your sort of trust in yourself to be able to break exactly when you have to and not a moment before to read and gather as much information. And roughly the same thing is happening here. So when I say cocky, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's only a bad thing if you can't back it up. And so I think it's easy to see a situation. It's easy to imagine, right? You play this cocky brand of cornerback. You are flat on your feet, you take all these big risks, and then you get to the NFL and the level of athleticism is a lot higher than you're used to. And suddenly you can't get away with those risks as much as you thought. And you have to completely reconfigure your game. And you get hurt a couple times and that screws up that kind of developmental process. And now you're totally in your head. And now you've got to refigure out exactly how risky you can or can't play. So just looking at last year, right? In Houston, where you've got D'Amico Ryans, who I'm going to guess, having been on the field himself not that long ago, is probably has a pretty easy time encouraging Okudah. Hey man, you play with that confidence, be you. And so we get this style of play. So what do I mean when I say he plays cocky? What does that actually like? What does cocky play look like? So there's a lot of press alignments in Houston, which doesn't translate very evenly into Minnesota. It doesn't really help us that much because he's not going to be in press man coverage a lot in Minnesota. That's just not the way Flores' defense is designed. But in those press man alignments where I think you kind of get to see the makeup of a man's soul, which is how they play when they are, 2-3 yards of cushion straight dead on a guy and saying, looking him dead in the eye and saying, I'm going to cover you and I'm not going to need any cushion to do it. Well, it's not no cushion. It's 2 or 3 yards of cushion. And in press, those 2 or 3 yards are precious, 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 precious. When you're when you have 8-9 yards of cushion, you can afford to sort of stand flat-footed, let them come forward 2 or 3 yards, get a read on it. With only 2 or 3 yards of cushion, if you let them come directly into your face, into what wide receiver coaches will call handshake distance, or at least a wide receiver coach that taught me about handshake distance called it handshake distance. But I like that phrase, right? If you're in the distance to shake a man's hand, when you break, there's no room at all. Once you break to the inside or the outside, he has no time to read and react to that because you've eaten up all the cushion. So typically, corners will not want to give up that 2 or 3 yards of cushion. They don't want receivers to get into handshake distance. Okudah lets it happen every time. He lets it happen routinely and on purpose. This is not him failing to do something. This is a very purposeful thing that he is doing. And what that means is you're really, really, really trusting your ability to turn your hips and bail. Okudah has extremely smooth hips. It's one of the things that people liked about him coming out of college. And his ability to transition and then get going, right? Get turned around and bail out and get going full speed is good enough where you can let a guy come up into handshake distance and then let him break to the inside or the outside. Force him to go to the inside or the outside, right? I'm not going to move out of your way. You either have to go through me and you're going to get disrupted just timing wise doing that, or you have to go outside of the path that you want to go on. It's one advantage. And then when you do that, I have the athletic ability to essentially make up for that lost ground. I don't need 2 or 3 yards of cushion. I can make up 2 or 3 yards of cushion by just being a really good athlete. That's essentially the Jeff Okudah strategy. And it didn't work very well in the NFL when those tiny little margins of speed and tiny little margins of space can be absolutely fatal against the wrong guy, right? There is a particular rep where there are a couple reps where Xavier Worthy gets the better of him against the Chiefs. There's one where Zay Flowers gets him against the Ravens, and they all kind of start in that way where it's you let him get right where he wanted to be, and then there's no margin of error for you to turn around. So why do this? Why play this way? What's the reward if you're taking all this risk? Well, for one, you're not committing to anything ever. If you backpedal a little bit, which is what most corners will do in press. If you're not press jamming, right? If you're not doing something super aggressive, you'll be in press. And if he is going to work 2 yards toward you, you backpedal 2 more yards. And you essentially say, no, I'm going to keep this distance from me and I'm going to force you to declare. Eventually you got to run your route, right? You can't just sit here and wiggle at me forever, right? Eventually you have to run your route. So I'm going to maintain my cushion and force you to break with my two, or enter your route stem or do what you're going to do, release with my cushion intact, and therefore I can read and react. The advantage is you are not going to break on anything, right? He stands flat-footed, feet in the ground. So no head fakes, no wiggle, no nothing is going to get him moving a specific way. He's going to bite on absolutely nothing. Think of it as like a polar opposite to Andrew Booth, who would bite on everything. The other advantage is you get to be physical, right? If you're going to let that guy come into handshake distance, well, guess what? I can shake your hand too. I can even grab it. I can even throw a punch at your shoulder pad, and I can try to redirect you that way. That's why Okudah does things that way. This philosophy comes up when he's in off coverage as well. There are a lot of reps where, he's zoning off. The only other thing that I think is differentiating about Okudah that's worth mentioning before I move on to some of the other camp stuff is the way that Houston used him outside of the second half of the Chiefs game, which seemed to be some kind of halftime adjustment, or maybe somebody got hurt. I don't know. Somebody let me know. But he played the entire second half of the Chiefs game. That was the only time he just played like elongated, non-garbage time reps, but which is why I picked that game. The rest of it was like exclusively third and longs. He just played third and longs and in like 2-minute, end of half stuff. So they put him on the field when they knew it was going to be a pass. And when they were worried about, when they knew that it was going to have to be a deep pass, which is interesting. I think it probably says more about the guy that was coming off of the field, which was Houston's nickel. I forget his name, but they're like, typical slot corner would come off of the field. Okudah would replace him, and then Kamari Lassiter would kick inside, much like Byron Murphy does here. And that was like a package for them. That was like a third and long coverage package. That was how Okudah was used in Houston. He did not start. He was hurt for a lot of the year, so like that's part of it. So if Okudah is the actual starter, the way that this matters to me is, I guess we have to like take that package and then ask, okay, how does it fit into Flores' defense? We'll talk about that and all the other camp stuff next on Locked On Vikings. Today's Locked On Vikings episode is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It is that time of year when it's July, August. Your fantasy drafts are coming up. You're setting up leagues. Check out Yahoo Fantasy. I have been in and out of fantasy football leagues since I was a kid. Yahoo Fantasy is a thing I am very familiar with. They are one of the gold standard apps for a reason. One of the most popular for a reason. The draft day experience is smooth. It's super smooth to do your waivers, your trades. It loads quickly. Like the app functionally works quickly, which can matter a lot when you're trying to do like a last second waiver claim or a last second, ad drop because somebody's hurt that you didn't realize was hurt on game day. And, it's 11:56 and kickoff is in 4 minutes and you have to make a move or something like that. Yahoo is an app that's not going to be like loading while you're trying to do that. Yahoo Fantasy's been around for 28 years, and to celebrate those 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all starts August 4th, so stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a fantasy football league at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. That's yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl, and let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. Wrapping up this Jeff Okudah thing quickly on the Locked On Vikings podcast. And again, if you want to see all this, because this is just a podcast, right? Or if you're watching on YouTube, it's a podcast with a talking head. The actual film analysis is on the Patreon page. That is patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL. So if you want to go check it out, go check that out. For everybody else, or if you're listening in your car or whatever, you can't watch a video anyways. The question becomes, okay, so here's this like super risk-takey corner that has probably taken risks that got him burned at times, and then the health thing, and that has caused his career to derail. Why do we expect it to be better here if he is going to be the de facto CB3? This is going to be basically the same role Shaq Griffin played in Minnesota last year. Shaq Griffin was a starter. You would be hard pressed to argue that Shaq Griffin was like a bench player. No, he was a starter, and right now it looks like Jeff Okudah is a starter in the same role. So how am I going to expect this to be different? And I think a big reason is that cockiness is a lot easier to cover up in off coverage. Just the alignment thing here helps to paper over that issue. And it makes it difficult because it just means that what you see in Houston is not necessarily what you're going to get in Minnesota for better or worse. And it's kind of difficult to determine if you're going to get better or worse, the better or the worse of that. But if his issue is that he essentially believes in himself too much, he believes in his ability too much, and he underestimates what his opponents can do to punish tiny little margins of error, well, if you stack him 9 yards off and force him to, read, react, make decisions, and then trigger quickly on things, that's a much different version of gameplay that is a little bit more globally aware. There's a bit of a tunnel vision moment that sort of bugged me with Okudah sometimes on like crossers and stuff, and especially on short game, where you're just going to want, you're going to need him, you're going to need to give him like specific instructions on how to read. I don't think that will be an issue. I don't think that's something like, that's probably just a facet of how Houston wanted him to be reading things versus how Minnesota would, and it's just different. But the point is, you're going to be able to make informed decisions whether you like it or not. Like, you're going to have cushion whether you like it or not. And so the idea that he like plays it too fast and loose with his cushion will give him 9 yards of it, and then he can afford to be 2 yards slow. That's okay if you've got 9 yards of cushion because it's off man. And by the way, we're blitzing, so it's all very forgiving. But that also means a lot of zoning off. The one thing that is really cool about the way he like turns his hips is that it's really easy for him to kind of play the deep route with his hips, back, and then quickly flip them, turn them, and trigger downhill. That's going to be a big one for Flores' defense. But you're basically, you can kind of have him play 9 yards off and zone him to wherever, he'll be fine. I think that's really going to be what it is most of the time it'll be fine. He'll do his zone. He'll be where he's supposed to be. He'll park himself. He's like a 6th-year veteran. He'll park himself where he's supposed to park himself, and it'll be fine. I don't think this is, unless the Vikings decide they're going to be a man coverage team, then suddenly, all these press man issues can get exposed. But you're never going to see him like one-on-one with Ja'Marr Chase, from snap to whistle. No, he's going to have help. He's going to be in zones. He's going to be covering deep. He's going to be covering underneath. He might end up, contesting a catch with Ja'Marr Chase if Ja'Marr Chase comes into his zone. But I don't think you're going to be tasking guys with like shadowing or one-on-oneing like it's some kind of man match cover 7 Mike Zimmer thing. That's not the way this is going to work out. That said, it's a bummer that that's not the way that this is going to work out, because I wanted it to work out this way. And this is sort of the complaint that I've had globally about the Vikings defense is they can't play man. So when it's week 8 and someone just carved up their zone and you're going, man, why didn't Flores adjust? Where was the adjustment to switch to more man coverage? Well, it was left in the offseason at some point when they decided that Jeff Okudah was going to be CB3. You can't just man up with that guy. He'll just get cooked. You're just going to go from getting cooked one way to getting cooked another way. And it's like, I don't know, you roast a pig or fry a pig. Either way, you're eating it for dinner. Like, it doesn't matter how you get cooked. You're getting cooked. So we'll see. I don't think that this like solves their man coverage issue. That would be a pretty hot take if I did. But hopefully you kind of understand the nature of Okudah and how that's going to hopefully fit into the Flores system in a way that sort of declines him the opportunity to make the mistake he loves to make. I shouldn't even say mistake. To play that aggressive style that's like maybe a little bit too risky for a blitz-heavy defense that isn't always going to have a lot of help over the top. That's enough talk about that. Let's quickly go over a little bit of news and notes about the Vikings. We'll start with the one I maybe scared you with at the top if you hadn't heard about it yet. So Justin Jefferson hasn't been out there at camp for a couple of days now. He on day 2, he lightly strained his hamstring, and they shut him down. O'Connell basically said you weren't going to see him in the preseason anyways, so we're not really worried about it. It seems like there's no concern at all for like week 1 or anything like that. He's just going to miss a bunch of camp. For someone like Justin Jefferson, like that's the kind of guy that you don't really care if he misses camp or not. And in some ways, it's kind of nice that you're going to see like, maybe a little more Ty Felton with the ones. You're going to see Jalen Naylor get a lot more looks now from JJ McCarthy, and you're going to be able to get a better look of that. Or if there's like a wide receiver 3 controversy, Lucky Jackson got wide receiver 1 reps like a lot. He rotated in. Like that's something you probably aren't doing if Justin Jefferson is there. So you can kind of make lemonade out of lemons there, and then just kind of hope that that hamstring is truly healed up. But honestly, if you put him in bubble wrap and didn't touch him till what's day is the opener? September 8th. Yeah, put him in bubble wrap till September 8th. I doubt many people will complain. But, It's always a nice, scary thing to happen. So if you're wondering, oh my God, where's Justin Jefferson? Why isn't he back after 3 weeks? I thought it was a light strain. That's probably a normal way to handle that. It probably would be fine if they had a game. It'd be one of those things, right? Where if they had a game, it'd be fine. But you're not going to throw him out there at practice until that thing is not so much of an iota of any feeling in it at all, until he can no longer feel that it's a thing at all. It's going to be fine, and Justin Jefferson's been around long enough and is enough of a superstar where I'm not too worried about him falling behind, and he and J.J. McCarthy have been working on chemistry a lot all over the offseason, so I'm not really worried about the chemistry thing either. To me, it's something to keep in mind, especially if other injuries happen down the road. You can say, hey, was that hamstring maybe not fully healed? Did that cause other things or something like that? But it's mostly something to file away, and there's not really much more to say about it. There's plenty to say, though, about Joshua Matelis' extension and J.J. McCarthy's camp debut in front of the fans, which was pretty explosive. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's Locked On Vikings episode is brought to you by Gametime. It's just about time to start getting those NFL tickets. And look, it can be kind of a nightmare. Tickets, single game tickets, like just went on sale. So it can be kind of a nightmare to like wait in the line, refresh the page all the time. Or if you've ever done that dance with like concert tickets, it sucks so bad. Gametime helps you totally skip that process. It makes getting tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to kickoff, and you save up to 60% off with their killer last minute deals. If you also want to make sure that you're happy with your seat, hey, not a bad seat in US Bank Stadium, but if you're going to some other venue or seeing a game or a concert or something somewhere else, you can look at a panoramic seat view right on the app to make sure that you're satisfied. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Moving on here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Other news and notes out of Viking land over the weekend. Josh Matelis signed a 3-year contract extension that is worth $36 million, 25 of it guaranteed, and it can be up to $42 million with incentives. That $6 million in incentives is kind of a flag that it's probably like $1 million for Pro Bowl, All Pro, and Super Bowl. That is a structure the Vikings have used before, so it could be that kind of thing in 2 different years. But this is about $12 million a year in total average annual value. We do not have contract structure details yet, but it keeps Joshua Matelis in the building through 2028, and it properly rewards him for the sort of pillar of the defense that he has been. But it's not full safety money. This is one that I saw, and you know, guys like Matt Freese and Tyler Forness, both of whom have been on this show and both of whom do the contract prediction game, got it pretty close. So maybe I shouldn't have been as surprised as I was, but I kind of thought this would be more. You have a lot of safeties around free agency getting 14, 15 mil a year. So 12 mil a year is pretty low and is closer to what like a good nickel corner will make. I think that's an interesting moment of negotiation on behalf of Drew Rosenhaus to kind of get him paid like a nickel instead of a safety, which would have been like $2 million a year more. But it also, I don't think, is entirely inaccurate in terms of calling him a nickel corner instead of a safety. But the fact that he plays both positions to me is like, well, isn't that kind of more valuable than one or the other anyways? And the Vikings have been very, very clear about the role that he plays and how much stuff it enables, right? If Josh Matelis can be the overhang guy, that means you don't have to ask Dallas Turner to be that. You can have him rush on the inside. It means you don't have to ask Blake Cashman to be that. He can play off the ball and, you know, be in a hook zone like he's used to. It means you don't have to ask Harrison Smith to do that. You can put him in quarters in the backfield and have him watch the QB's eyes and try to get an interception. If you can put Josh Matelis in at linebacker when Blake Cashman goes down, that means that you don't have to ask Andrew Van Ginkel to do that. And you can have him do, like, it pays so many dividends kind of no matter what is going on the field. that I do think that this is going to age very well. I think this Matelis deal is we're eventually going to look at it and say, wow, this is good value, right? We certainly were saying that about the last deal that he played, which was basically a core special teamer money and, maybe depth guy that'll kind of step in every once in a while. It's not unlike the deal that Theo Jackson just signed. And we can only hope that Theo Jackson's on the same trajectory, right? Where he becomes this full-fledged starter and eventually is going, hey, I need more than this. But there was also no concern ever in the building that this wouldn't get done. I know there was the the hold in speculation that I definitely thought he would hold in. He did not. And then on the second day, he twists his ankle, which Kevin O'Connell, after this deal is signed, reiterated that is a real ankle injury. He's still not back just because the contract is done. So it seems like it really was a real injury, which can we just stop and talk about that real quick? We need to not do the thing where if one thing happened, that's the thing that's happening every time. We need to not do the tweak thing. This drove me insane with the Danielle Hunter, the tweak in his neck, and he's going to be back in a couple days. And then it turned out he needed season-ending surgery, and everybody. Now, any minor injury that people said, that the team says, oh, we're not concerned about, is a tweak and could mean season-ending surgery. And that's just an exhausting way to live, right? Anytime any player gets any minor injury, oh my God, it's going to be season-ending surgery because remember that one time it was a tweak. And really, the lesson there is, the Danielle Hunter tweak thing happened, and then it never happened again. It is not every single time. It is not the Danielle Hunter thing. And we need to not do that with the hold-in thing. Yeah, hold-ins happen. Hold-ins have happened above board, right? Justin Jefferson held in. Plenty of contract situations. Danielle Hunter himself held in with the full blessing and cooperation of the Minnesota Vikings. And they were hey, we wish he was practicing, but we get it. We're working on a contract. We'll get the thing resolved. And there was no animosity at all about it. So it's really hard for me to say as soon as a player in a contract thing, right now, it feels impossible for a Vikings player to be both in a contract negotiation and also get any football injury doing football practice. That shouldn't be the least likely option. That's the most likely option. And the hold-in thing, I will probably only respect if it is specifically reported and agreed to. I don't think we need to do it secretly. So just maybe be a little bit chiller about this kind of thing next time. Okay. But regardless, Matelis is expected to be back at practice in the next couple days. It doesn't seem like it's a serious injury at all. And, now he's locked up through 2028. The last thing I'll leave you with, I'll leave you with something so you can go get some sweet drink. Well, you're probably listening to this in the morning, so this is a good, would send you off into your work day or whatever. Maybe you fall asleep to this. Some people do. Sweet dreams. JJ McCarthy on Saturday, fantastic practice. He had this very, very explosive day, highlighted with a really tight window red zone throw to TJ Hawkinson, a couple of beautiful rainbow balls down the field, all in the middle in the post, which don't quite beat the deep ball allegations that we had against McCarthy because most of those had to do with go balls to the sideline. The post balls were always pretty good, and these ones were good as well. It was more about deep and to the outside and stuff to the outside in general, rather than just he can't throw deep, which people turned into an arm strength thing in the draft and stuff, and they were super wrong. No, so that doesn't that's not surprising to me, but they were nice, and it's super awesome to see this awesome bomb to Jordan Addison, which there's been a few of those now, and his teammates are all whooped up, and the crowd's getting all whooped up. It's a very cool thing to see. Some zippy ones to the sideline and short, some quick outs and stuff like that, which are nice to see the kind of the cadence and the rhythm there. And the timing of it is really nice. But I think one of the ones I really liked, it was, I believe, in the red zone period. And there was a little bit of pressure that came up through a double team between Donovan Jackson and Ryan Kelly, which none of this O-line, D-line stuff means anything until it gets on pad. So don't freak out about that. But there's a little bit of pressure coming up the middle. And just that little sidestep, which McCarthy has always been good at, that little sidestep and then fires a nice accurate ball. I think that one was to Lucky Jackson. There's a lot of really, really nice stuff on display in camp. We're still in shorts. We're not in full pads yet. And we got a long way to go before we're making any kinds of declarations. I mean, even after the preseason, if McCarthy even plays in it, which I think if camp keeps going the way it is going, I would not anticipate that he plays in the preseason. it seems like he's kind of showing that he's got a handle on it enough where he doesn't need preseason reps, and rather that they will use the joint practices, which are more reps, safer reps, and sort of a better dress rehearsal than the preseason games have, even though the preseason has all of the like game day sideline. It's a dress rehearsal for that. It's a dress rehearsal for coaches and stuff like that. But in terms of the actual practice reps and the actual warm up and dress rehearsal for the season, the Vikings have been pretty adamant that the joint practices are better, and they've got 2 sessions of them. So I'm going to guess you get a lot of, they're going to run the ones a ton during those. And then you're going to see like Sam Howell and Brett Rippon during the preseason. So get excited for that. I will talk to you all tomorrow. It's Town Hall Tuesday, so get your questions in. The Google form is in the show notes. I will see you all for that. And as always, Skol.